I was Daniel's portfolio manager. And as such, I watched him take early steps at the organization he co-founded and is president of, Green Impact Campaign. And he would share with me strategies about expansion, partnerships, and most important to him is engaging students. So encouraging new champions of energy efficiency has been Daniel's passion from the start. And I remember visiting Daniel, it's like 2 years ago at this point, and I participated in an energy audit. It was unforgettably with Amsterdam Falafel. And Daniel and I accompanied a student, and she took me through all of her paces. She was like an expert energy auditor. And we would like ducking under the counter to check all the lights, running back into the kitchen to examine like what fixtures they had. She took me outside to make sure that we could see what signage they had out front. And of course, you know, she's taking notes and she's making sure like she's marking down everything that they have, examining even the exit sign. She said, don't forget, there are light bulbs in there. Okay. And so, you know, she was just a student, and she was so confident and had clearly done energy audits times before. So she compiled a list of recommendations, and when completed, she sat down with the owner, went through a detailed list of what could be improved to save both energy and money. And what I saw was transformative in this student. Her confidence was abundant, the pleasant surprise of the shop owner was joyful, and all the while Daniel sat by, a silent observer and filled with pride. And so this is the person we have here tonight, someone who allows his students to shine, provides that platform for them to make real change in the world. So we're going to hear from Daniel about his work at GIC, and then transition to a conversation with Davida Heller, the VP of Sustainability at Citi. Thank you for being here, Davida. And we'll have time for questions at the end. So again, thanks to Davida for being here tonight. She manages Citi's Global Sustainability Initiative and goals including the implementation of Citi's Sustainable Projects Progress Strategy. She also leads the financial accounting and impact metrics for Citi's $100 billion environmental finance goal. Super ambitious. And in addition, Davida works to build the company-wide engagement opportunities and awareness of sustainability, notably on climate change risks and opportunities. So if you can see, as you can see, we have the ingredients for a really fascinating conversation that shows how the macro city and their initiatives can intersect and complement the work of the micro in what Daniel and Green Impact Campaign seeks to achieve. So I'm very happy to turn the floor over to Daniel.
Thank you very much, Leah. Well, thank you very much, Leah. That one got me a little bit. I'm going to trip over this cord several times, so just give me a heads up. What Leah left out about the Amsterdam Falafel audit was they were given free falafel sandwiches afterwards. And I didn't really want to say anything, but that happens a lot for the students whenever they help restaurants. Like, well, let me at least give you some food to say thank you. And I think that was actually Greta's like fourth assessment, and she was already just like killing it. She was great. So anyway, thank you so much, everyone, for being here. Thank you, Lindsay and Carol, for putting this together. This has been really exciting for me to come up. So I'm based out in D.C., so it's always nice to be able to drop in the Ekman Green office and see how much more wood they've added to the office. But what I was hoping to talk about before our conversation is really what Green Impact Campaign's doing. And that really begins with these two groups that have kind of become this neglected area of climate change. So on one hand, we have these small businesses. So small businesses contribute around $60 billion in energy costs every year. $60 billion is equivalent to about 1/3 of the homes in the country, how much energy they're creating. So the issue is that small business owners are really busy. So they usually lack the time or the knowledge or the resources to know where to begin in saving energy. So most of them just don't really do anything, or they're very passive or kind of just reactive to upgrades. At the same time, we have millions of students out there that are really passionate about the climate, They're going to school to study energy or sustainability, and they really want a career that's going to actually go into that field and make an impact. But the problem that we're hitting is we're actually failing them in a major way. We're expecting them to learn all that by doing this, by sitting in a classroom, having someone talk at them, everyone taking notes on their Mac, and say that's energy, that's climate, go out and have a career. And it's failing them pretty bad. Actually, 1/3 of students that are studying this field don't feel prepared for their first job in the field. So it's a huge gap that we're seeing. I should know I was actually one of these students. So I went to school to study energy. I was going to create the next great alternative fuel. And then I remember the biggest dreaded question everyone would ask me is like, well, what do you want to do in the energy field? And I didn't know what a job looked like in the field. I just didn't understand it. I was convinced that there was still some magic involved in energy. Like you'd flip a switch and a light would go on. I didn't really get how that happened. So I had no idea what kind of jobs you would do for that. So we've started thinking about it differently. So we said, well, what if instead of this, students could learn by doing this? They could be out in the real world, dealing with real issues, and in the process of their learning, they could actually be making a real impact with a business by helping them save energy. So that's what we're doing. So Green Impact Campaign is a nonprofit. We provide tools and training to students across the country to go out and conduct these free energy assessments for small businesses in their community. Our vision is really to be able to empower any student in any location at any time to be able to learn about energy, to be able to boost their resume, to gain some real-world skills, and all in the process help a small business actually save energy. So I'll walk you through kind of how this all works. So everything is cloud-based. So students join by signing up on our website. After that, they complete our interactive training that goes through how to select some businesses, how to reach out to them, but more importantly, how do we actually conduct the assessment. So our energy assessment looks at the major energy use areas of a building, so lighting, HVAC, plug load, building envelope, water, waste, and the curriculum goes through all of those. Once they've completed the training and they start reaching out to businesses and a business says yes, students use our mobile application called GEMS to actually conduct the assessment. So GEMS prompts them with simple yes/no questions, and as they walk through the building, they answer these questions about the business and about how they're using energy. So the types of light bulbs, the types of windows they might have, what their settings on their thermostat are. And as questions are answered, GEMS automatically begins to compile this report for the business. So the report will give them custom actionable recommendations, but it'll also give them cost estimates, savings estimates, and for any small business owner, how long of a payback it's going to be. So this whole process takes a student about 20 minutes to complete. So to put that in other terms, a student could have probably completed an assessment of the Echo and Green office by the time we've started this. And on average, a business finds around 23% in savings. So this isn't your, a dollar here, a dollar there. This is pretty significant savings that these businesses are finding. So I'll show you just one more example since Lee actually gave a very nice one. So this is Kara and Jeff. Kara was a sustainability management major at American University. She was working at an ice cream shop at the time, because obviously that really leads into sustainability so well. And meanwhile, Jeff is he's the owner of a local brewery in DC called DC Brow. He is obsessed with his beer, and he will talk to you about it for hours. So about a year and a half ago now, or a year ago, Kara conducted an assessment for Jeff. And Jeff found the savings, and he started to implement a couple of the recommendations and started seeing the savings after a couple months. Kara would go on with a couple other students at AU to conduct assessments for 20 more DC businesses. They would find a total of $50,000 in energy savings. Meanwhile, Jeff did begin to implement those, and he started seeing the savings. So we caught up with Kara a couple months ago, and she said that the biggest talking point for her interviews after college was green impact. She said this was the #1 thing that she was talking to employers about. because it was so real world, it was so tangible. I'm thrilled to say she's actually a sustainability associate at ICF now, down in Northern Virginia. And she's also a fellow of the Clean Energy Leadership Institute now. So we are thrilled with what she's been doing along with a lot of the other students. Meanwhile, there's Jeff and his beer. Jeff, he wasn't really done there. So he got an assessment, he implemented the changes, and for us, we've always been like, that's what we're trying to do. We want you to implement what we're recommending. But he gave us a call one day and he said, hey, I think there's something wrong. I think I'm being as efficient as possible. I changed all the lighting out. We're doing reclaimed heat for the brewery and the water processing. But my bill seems really high still. Is there anything you guys can do? So we connected Jeff with an energy supplier an energy service provider that actually will look through your electric rate and see if there's a cheaper supplier in a deregulated state. So they actually did find that, and now DC Brow is saving thousands of dollars a year just on costs because they were actually on just too high of a rate that they got locked into. So this is a very common occurrence for small business owners. Kind of Jeff's story. As a small business owner, you're really busy. You got so much going on that it's understandable if energy management isn't like at the top priority. Like, we get that. But the idea with Green Impact and why we're seeing such great success is once they receive this free assessment, they see the potential, they start implementing a couple things, they actually see the real savings, they want to go further because they realize it's less about this concept of green and being environmentally friendly, and it's more about just running a smarter business. It's about being more profitable, it's about being a better community leader. And because of that, we've actually been able to create a model around this concept of going beyond the assessment. So one of the models that we run is this Green Service Provider Network, where we connect interested businesses with energy service providers in areas like solar, green energy procurement, LED lighting, and in return we receive a small referral fee for any new customers that we bring them. So it's worked out really well over the past couple of years, and we've been seeing more and more partners get on board, and we've seen more and more businesses do incredible things with these additional services. The other thing more recently that I'm really excited about is this landlord-tenant partners that we're doing. So I'm still trying how to figure out how best to describe this, but we're partnering with real estate developers and investment trusts that have retail shopping centers, and they really want their tenants to be as sustainable as their organization. But I don't know how many people are in real estate, but to actually engage with your tenants is extremely difficult from a landlord standpoint. So they've begun to contract us to actually go into some of their select retail centers and send a team of students in to conduct as many free energy assessments for their businesses as possible. And there's two reasons why they care so much about their tenants' energy usage. One, a lot of these organizations are very conscious of being sustainable, and they're doing everything they can from the portfolio level, but you actually can't really control some of the things that are going on inside the tenant, but they actually want to be more of a holistic, comprehensive, sustainable approach. The other reason is, and this one might make more sense, if you have more profitable tenants, you have more tenants that can pay rent. So the idea is if you can actually lower some of their costs, they can actually be able to afford rent every month instead of having to do rent deferrals and things like that. So there's lots of reasons why a lot of real estate developers are starting to kind of catch on to this, why it's so important to have programming for tenants. So to give you an example of just one shopping center we did with one of our partners, Federal Realty, we sent a group of 9 students into one of these shopping centers, and 2 hours later, they had completed 14 out of the 21 tenants in that shopping center. This 2/3%, when we first started having conversations with Federal, they said 10% was like a great success rate for tenant engagement. Like they were really happy with somewhere around 10%. So what we're seeing is just this unbelievable approach where students just kind of flood these shopping centers, and we're seeing great savings from them. So this is a model that we're still kind of really figuring out. We think there's incredible scale to this, and this could really do something for a neglected area with this landlord-tenant gap. So it's something that we're going to continue to kind of build on. So to date, what our numbers have been. So in the past 3 years, we've had 1,500 students join Green Impact. They've helped 900 businesses across the country. I think we've had a business in 35 of the 50 states so far. We've also had some international. We've had a lot of things going on up in Canada, and then there's just been hodgepodge here and there. And then to date, as of today, we've seen around $1.5 million in identified energy savings. So these are all numbers that make me very happy. But the thing that I care most about, and really our mission's all about, is what's beyond that. So 9 out of 10 of the students that go through the program have said that this has helped advance their career in some way, or it's helped them actually get a job in the green field. And that makes us very happy, because that's really what we're trying to do. Meanwhile, about 70% of businesses say that they implement some of the changes within 1 year of receiving the assessment. So keep in mind that some of these things that we're recommending are actually behavioral and operational. So there is no capital, there is no investment. It's just simply, turn a couple more of these lights off after hours instead of leaving all of them on. Some quick changes that they start to do. And our whole concept is we just want small momentum. We just want to build this momentum. We want to get some small wins, and the cumulative impact is really what we're after. So this is big for us, because it really goes back into our mission of we're just trying to help students learn about energy while we're helping small businesses save energy, and we're just going to keep kind of growing in that direction. So I think that's all I have prepared. Here's just some of my contact information, but yeah, that's about it.
Much, Daniel. So now we can call Davida up, and as we're getting set up for the next portion of the evening, I just want to remind you all that there will be an opportunity to ask questions. So just remember to start gathering those.
You're not mic'd? You're not mic'd anymore?
And we're also going to have a little bit of networking after this, so feel free to stick around.
I have a question. Do you have the data shows how much is the energy cost for a small business in general?
Oh yeah, so do you want to do questions afterwards?
How about we do your conversation? What we're going to do is just have a little conversation between Daniel and Davida, and then we're going to open it up to questions at the end. So sorry if that was confusing, but yeah, so just think about your questions now, and we'll get to them later. Sorry about that.
Well, I'm Davida Heller from Citi, and it's great to be here. I'm really excited to be with Daniel. I was blown away by that presentation, and it kind of took me full circle, because that's actually how I got interested in the field of sustainability and the environment, in that I was living in California at the time, doing something much different for my job, and I learned, I had always been passionate about sustainability, and I had wanted to learn and get into energy efficiency, and I heard about these programs through my local utility after getting my LEED accreditation, where I could learn to be essentially like a home performance analyst, or be able to go into people's homes and really help them to identify these savings. So when we were speaking the other day, it was just really inspiring for me to hear how you were helping to bring that forward. And I know you gave a little bit of an overview of how that started, but I'm just wondering if you could, there is no real path to this career. And I know I get asked a lot, like, how did you get into the business? And so I'm just curious a little bit more. I feel like you really identified a need, and that's always so great from a business side. But I'm also wondering, like, where did the passion come from for energy and sustainability?
Yeah, I think that's a good point. There is not really like a clean path, and I try to take the cleanest one possible, because from a very young age I was like, I know I want to work in this field. For me, my dad and my mom actually worked for the government for 35 years doing audits of natural resources and energy and national parks. So I was always kind of around it, and I always saw like this decline of so many parks, and it just became really interesting to me. So I had this clear path, like I'll go to school for it, I'll get an internship for it, and I'll go into the career. But like I said, I thought I was going to do alternative fuels, and I realized there was no path for that at the time, so I switched over. So I think that's where a lot of the program kind of was originated from, was this idea of there should be more opportunities just to get a taste of a couple different fields. So our program is really focused on, it's not a huge investment, it's not an internship, it's something that you can do on your own schedule in your own community, and within an hour of signing up you can actually be outside. So we tried to have something very standardized, very simple, because I think you were fortunate to be in California where there was a couple programs that were available, but someone that might be in like Montana might not have the same opportunities. So we just wanted to make something very standard and very ubiquitous across all programs.
And I guess to take that to the next kind of level and looking at macro versus micro. So that's also something that I think we talked about a little bit, where I sit in city, I sit in corporate sustainability, and we work on a few different, really all of city's sustainability strategy with a focus on environmental finance, environmental and social risk, and operations and supply chain. And it's from a very big macro level where I'm looking at deals that are coming through that are big renewable energy, solar, and wind farms, and I look at those to essentially aggregate them for this 100 billion environmental finance goal that City has, where we're looking at the activity throughout the bank that contributes to climate change, reduction, and so this includes green bonds, alternative energy finance, and these other areas. But I'm looking at it, from this big macro perspective, and energy efficiency is a small piece, but is something that we actually report out. And then I kind of hearing what you talk about, where you're on the ground, kind of micro, and in order to do what we do, we need you to do what you do. And so I'd love if you could just kind of talk about, maybe from that perspective, how you see energy efficiency, I guess, in the broader scheme of the energy conversation.
Yeah, and I think you touched on something else that's really interesting when it comes to this conversation. There is that like local on the ground aspect, and then there's that macro aspect. And I think people always try to figure out like which is the one, what do I focus on? And I've personally always viewed it as there's that macro level where you have these big initiatives, you have policy, you have really these overarching ideas, and then below that you have this more of the community and regional approach, the clean power plan. Like that really kind of shows that approach where we're going to give it to the states and let them figure things out. And then you have the more individual. You have people turning lights off in their room, or students going out and doing an energy assessment. And I think so much of the focus has been on the top and the bottom. And what us coming together, so to speak, is so important is from that middle side, that community approach, I think, is the most important thing, because it does stem up and down so much. We're finding that if you put a policy in place, it doesn't necessarily make it down to the bottom. So we really need to start focusing more on bringing out that community aspect and how that can go both up and down. It can lead to policy being passed, or it can lead to individuals really taking action. But for me, for the really on the ground aspect, I live in DC, and I just can't listen to politics anymore. So I think I said I want to do something very far from policy. But no, I think that a big part of it was just there's a lack, I think, of programming out there. I think there's some really great minds that are working on the policy sides. I just don't think there's enough in the programming, and I think we need that in the immediate. I think energy efficiency is the same thing. That's an immediate solution that we can start doing right now. It might not be the sexiest one, but it has very proven results, and we need to really ramp that up.
And how, with energy efficiency and kind of the language of energy efficiency, I mean, I think you just hit something where, again, when I was starting out, I had started a consulting company where I was helping people in their homes to do these working with contractors and doing these energy efficiency audits. And it was really difficult when people can't see the results, and you're trying to say, but you will feel them in your wallet and in your pocket, but you can't say to your neighbor, look at my beautiful new boiler. Let me just take you through my HVAC system and
come down to my basement.
Right. Come down to my crawl space and we'll get in there. So, it's difficult to get people to understand that this is really the way to go and think about the contribution that you can make in the bigger picture. And I'm just wondering, we joke, but where does that incentive, how do you get to, I mean, it seems like you're also talking to students that are interested in this anyway, but I do think in light of politics and a lot of things, it's hard to feel that you're actually making a difference. And so I'm wondering on the individual, but also on the community level, how do you break through that and kind of get people to see the beauty of energy efficiency?
I don't know if that exists. Because I'm like, if you guys think of like, what's the first thing that comes to mind when you hear energy efficiency? It might be like a light bulb. Is that right? Light bulb. That's not very exciting. It's a light bulb. But when people are talking about like renewables or solar, like you get like something shiny in your mind and like a rooftop and someone usually doing like this to it. So I don't think they're really. Well, at least I don't think of any ideas that can like really beautify energy efficiency. I think what we've done is found a way to kind of circumnavigate that aspect. So the number one reason that businesses actually agree to an assessment is not because of the savings. It's because they wanted to help the student in their learning. So we're actually taking away this, we came out of the gates strong with this idea of like, we'll help you save money, we'll help you save money. And we realize that a lot of people are telling them that for all different kinds of things. But if we're coming from the standpoint of help this student in your community, who's also probably one of your customers, in their learning, that opens up a door that just was always closed before. So I think that's kind of how we're still driving this mission that we've had, but we're just finding a little bit different of approach to get in there.
And I like the term that you used, energy champion. We also use that term internally, where we have people who are, not maybe on the specific teams that are involved in the day-to-day of our work, or our partner teams work throughout the firm, but we have champions in different parts of the world that really help us to identify issues or opportunities. And I'm wondering, what do you look for in an energy champion? What are those qualities that you think helps those particular students, like Kara, to really kind of shine?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing is just their drive. A lot of them, it doesn't matter what their background is. We've had creative writing majors that have gone out and done incredible things. We've had a lot of international students that just were kind of curious, but they really had this drive of wanting to learn. If it doesn't really matter their technical background, because that's our whole thing. We're going to provide them with all the tools they need. As long as they have an interest and as long as they have a drive, then they're going to get where they're wanting to go. And I think that's been the most exciting thing personally for me, is just seeing what they've done with it. Like I couldn't imagine some of the stuff that the students have gone off and done. We've had a student that was a grad student at the time that participated and did about 10 assessments. Then she became a professor, and then part of her curriculum is now our program.
Oh.
So she has students going through her class doing assessments every semester because she realized this was a great learning tool. We've also had students that have gone on to win scholarships because of what they've done. They've presented in front of city councils on what they've done. So we never really imagined that. I mean, we couldn't imagine, but it goes all back to this idea of just them having this drive and this like determination that we can't necessarily give to them, but they definitely have it, and we're just happy to put something in front of them to let them run with it.
And is the drive about helping people save money in the sense that, there is, it's interesting when you think about sustainability and these kinds of improvements, when you think about the tax incentives and these write-offs, a lot of the times the people that are taking advantage of those are people that are not really in low income areas. They're probably, their awareness of these kinds of benefits might be a little bit higher than those in lower income areas that really could benefit from these kinds of things. And so, it's just, I understand that. And then I also wonder, is it the environmental component? Like where do you see that drive in youth today that you're working with on kind of what their passions are?
It's jobs. That's their biggest thing. They want a job, but it is beyond that. They want a job that they feel good about. They want to be doing something good with their career. And a lot of people land on this aspect of, the most pressing issue facing civilization is climate change. That seems like a good one to start with. So honestly, they're looking for something to put on their resume, something that they can talk about in interviews. And again, I think this goes back to the idea of what was the perceived incentive versus what actually ended up happening. That's still true. Like, a lot of them are very interested in having something for their resume. But what we also realized was they love talking to people in the community. So a lot of students don't really get off campus that often. So we hear a lot of people saying, like, it's been so fun talking to these small business owners, hearing their stories, like learning about what they're doing, trying their food, and really kind of seeing what they do in the community. So I think jobs is the big one, but I think a lot of them have just found this way to better connect with their community that they haven't had before.
And I guess to flip that around, for me, if I'm ever looking to hire someone, why should I hire an energy champion?
That's a great question. First of all, you should. No, I think it goes way beyond the technical aspect. These students are extremely brave and confident. That's what always amazes me. It's not just that they can go through a training on how to do an energy assessment, complete an energy assessment. Don't forget that they're actually the ones contacting these businesses. They're the actual ones that are like pitching it to them. So not only are they kind of learning this business development sales skills, but there's a lot of communication skills that go in with that. And then actually being able to manage their own schedule. So they're the ones that are saying, okay, well, we'll come back on this day at this time. We'll follow up in a week. We'll follow up in a month. To be able to actually self-organize and run that is tremendous skill and talent. And I mean, I would love to hire the students that go through our organization back into the organization. But yeah, they've just become these really incredible, well-rounded individuals that are ready for anything.
And then maybe thinking, as they get older, I'm curious to just connect back to energy efficiency itself. I'm wondering future, when you think about the future of your business and energy efficiency. I mean, what do you see or hope to see in the field?
Oh, I mean, I hope my job and my program's not needed at some point. I mean, I hope the idea is that this is so. That's the running joke with sustainability people, right? Like, eventually we're gonna do our job so well that we won't have a job. Like, everything will be sustainable and efficient and clean. I mean, as nice as that would be, it is a technology. So technologies are always advancing, they're always changing, and there's going to be someone that needs to keep cracking that whip. I don't know what I think. I'd really just like to see the attention shifted back. I think 5 to 10 years ago, there was a lot of spotlight on energy efficiency. I think people were kind of really talking about it as this just overlooked opportunity. And then it just kind of got pushed out by all these other new, fancier, autonomous technologies that are coming out. And I don't think there needs to be much more than just attention that's shifted to it. I don't have the answer on necessarily how that happens, but I hope that happens.
So maybe now is a good time, sorry to crawl off of here, to open up the floor to other folks who might have questions for either Davida or Daniel. I wonder if maybe we might start with you since you had the very first question.
My question is how much percentage is the cost of the image spending for small business compared to the other spendings?
I wish I had that answer. It really would depend on the type of business. So like a restaurant compared to like an accounting firm, it's going to vary. So I'm not sure what that breakdown would be.
I guess because we renovate a lot of stores in the Midtown Manhattan area. The owner usually concerned about the rentals, it's expensive, and the laborers. The image probably just a small proportion for those stores.
It is.
So
it is.
How can we motivate, especially and also I'm Chinese. Compared to Chinese people, American people got spoiled. When I went to the Miami and 1 month ago in a hotel, and when I opened my doors, the air conditioning turned on. It's very cool, and this never happened in China. When you leave the room, pull out the key, they say shut all the images. So it's right rather than behavior, rather than technology. And I believe American people, every person spend more money on image than Chinese people. And so how can we let them to have the awareness, just like the awareness of obesity and overweight, you have to aware about the image spending and what for. It's cost our soldiers' life in the Middle East. This is life saving, so you have to save the image. This is more like educational program rather than a technology.
I agree with that. I mean, education is the answer there, because a lot of, there's actually something called the Rebound Effect, where if you change out, like the lighting, for example, if you tell everyone that, okay, this office is now completely LED, everything is as efficient as possible, they do studies where they've actually found that people leave the lights on longer, because psychologically they're like, well, it's not using that much energy, it's okay if I leave it on when I leave the room. So it's an education issue more than anything else, I think. Just
So maybe we'll move on to.
Well, yeah, I was thinking about your comments just as you ended earlier, Daniel, with respect to you hope the focus shifts back to the energy efficiency. And I think one of the problems in the last 10 years is actually energy's gotten very cheap.
Yeah.
Fracking has led to practical oil independence in the U.S. Natural gas has gotten incredibly cheap and plentiful, and as a result, electricity's gotten very expensive. And I think, there was such a push years ago, people wanted more energy efficient cars, and now it's like, gas is cheap. And I live in New Jersey, they just raised the gas tax, so people are starting to be a little more sensitive to it, but it's still relatively cheap in comparison to 10 years ago. And then, we've asked people, I've done all the energy improvements in my home, but, there's definitely a return on investment to some of that. And people are like, well, how much am I really going to save every month versus spending the extra $2,000 on the higher efficiency furnace? And I agree with you in the long run, it, kind of comes down to it's the right thing to do. But I think for folks with limited budgets, particularly, it gets very challenging, and it's, I can buy a more energy efficient car, but my car gets maybe 20 to the gallon, gas is cheap, and I'm also a fan of using things as long as their life will let them. A 19-year-old Saab that's still running great, so I'm not going to replace it yet with a Prius or something. So, I don't know, how do you deal with those challenges, particularly with small businesses that sometimes run with razor-thin margins?
Yeah, it is tough. and I hope Saab gave you some money for that plug.
I think they're a business. They built them too well.
It is tough. And kind of back to your question, from a small business standpoint, I mean, your energy cost it might be, relatively small compared to your other larger costs, but it's your highest controllable operating expense. Meaning you have, of anything else that you're paying, you have the most control over bringing that one down. So it makes the most sense to put some attention there and really try to do that. As far as getting people to care if it's not necessarily hurting their wallet, unfortunately that is the big one. If it's in their wallet, then that's when they start paying attention. That's why a lot of people are actually for really raising gas taxes, because that's the way people would actually start to react. But beyond that, yeah, I wish I had better answers for it too. I'm just obsessed with efficiency in general, beyond just energy, so I think it's fascinating. But I don't know. What about you? What do you think in terms of how do we shift that focus back?
So it's interesting because at Citi, we see energy efficiency as a new asset class in the sense of looking at bundling energy efficiency loans. The difficulty is that at big banks, the deals are very large. And so when you're dealing with kind of home performance, it's, let's say a $10,000, $20,000, $30,000 loan, a singular loan is going to be very difficult to get financed, especially because, the way that works, how it transfers through is to the owner of the space and just kind of credit and everything. It's just like this new area. You say the focus used to be more, but from our perspective, this is still a very nascent investment area. And so the idea is to warehouse, so essentially aggregate multiple deals, use our capital to take that time and connect to the capital markets so that then you can essentially format that for the capital markets and then securitize it so that so that an institutional investor will see the value and be able to invest and then kind of keep building that out. So we are very involved with a program called the WHEEL program, which is the Warehouse Energy Efficiency Loan Program. And so it's in a few states. It's in New York, Kentucky, Pennsylvania. And it's essentially looking at really trying to establish energy efficiency. So you're dealing with multiple aggregated small loans into a much bigger opportunity, an investment opportunity. So it might feel like it's not really focused on, but that's where, from our perspective and looking at how do you find these innovative financial approaches to dealing with these issues, that's one that I think right now it's still young, and so it's not liquid, right? There's not a lot of trading. You don't hear about energy efficiency, that's the new thing we're going to trade and resell, and but that's the holy grail, right? That's where you want to essentially get to. So I don't know what will happen with that, but that's kind of where you hope it's gonna go with this kind of aggregated approach that makes it really attractive to bigger investors. That's where it'll go.
I have a few different questions. Real quick with Daniel, is there any plan to broaden the scope of the company to residential, or could we use the technology, if I wanted to go home and see how efficient my house is, can I do that with the technology, or is it small businesses only?
That's the number one question we get, so I'm glad you asked. Right now, it's made specifically for small businesses. We don't get mad if someone does it on their house because there is a lot of things that translate. There's some things that won't, you probably don't have exit signs in your house.
Right.
Maybe you do, I don't know. But there's still some things that you can apply, and obviously some of the calculations will still trade over.
Just like water usage, windows.
Yeah. Thermostats and
lighting,
your
yeah,
lights
all
and
that
your
sort of
refrigerators.
stuff.
Yes,
Okay.
some of that would definitely translate. But having said that, we have no plan to change over to residential anytime soon. For a couple of reasons. One, we are so focused on bringing attention to small businesses that we don't want to start to kind of muddle that a little bit by saying, there's all these other things we do. The other reason is our model doesn't necessarily work the same when it comes to residential. So we would never want to send students randomly to someone's home.
Right, no, yeah, that would be
That
like
scares
if I
us.
wanted to do it to my own home.
Oh yeah.
Right.
Yeah, if that's the case, then yes, you could. There would just be a couple of like workarounds to make it do it. But yeah, our plan is small businesses for the foreseeable future until we feel like we've mastered that. And then we've heard all other things. We've heard, what about agriculture? What about residential? What about, I think we've heard parking lots. What about parking lots?
Schools too.
Schools.
Yeah.
Schools is a really exciting one that I think when that day comes, I think schools would be the next thing that we look at, because we love the idea of having students within their own school doing these. But yeah, that's another day.
And then a follow-up question too. So do the students follow up with these companies, or do you just sort of plant the seed, if you did all of these enhancements, you could save X number of dollars, and then they pass their assessment to the company? Do the students follow up like a year later, a semester later, to see if they've actually done that?
Yeah, so we have two options. We love when students can do that, and we have like a prescribed follow-up schedule for them. But we recognize that they're also students and they got a lot going on.
Right.
So some of them, have a weekend they can volunteer and that's it, and then they're done. So we have some automated features on our end that if they can't do those things, then those will kick in to follow up, to make sure that they've taken a look at the report, to make sure that they don't have any questions, to make sure that they got connected with whatever service provider they were interested in.
Right.
And then the tool itself actually can track the results. So they can actually start marking off within the tool when they did something, and then we know that they did this on this date. So we're trying to automate as much as that is possible, with always preserving like that incredible human interaction between the student and the business.
And then, how deep does the assessment go? So if it's a restaurant, do you say, you're sourcing your vegetables and your meat from, if you're a New York restaurant, you're sourcing from California. Well, you could be sourcing from Connecticut, and you're cutting your transportation, your fuel emissions, yada, yada, yada. And same thing, I guess, for like clothing company too. You could be sourcing your wool from Canada versus Australia. I don't know, somewhere far away.
I would.
Look that deep into
No, I wish. Like getting
just
the.
lighting
Yeah, so we're not looking at anything like supply chain. And one reason is we wanted just to start with energy because it's very fast and easy, and they can have returns very quickly. When you talk about supply chain, that's a whole other larger relationships, really digging into their model. The other issue is it's not quite as standardized. So in one area, we would have to make specific recommendations than in another area. Right now, we have a tool that can be kind of a bit ubiquitous across any state, any region. So again, that's like a 3.0 kind of idea, is making it a little bit more comprehensively on the sustainability side. But right now, it's really energy, water, waste. Those are the big ones.
I'm so sorry. I can't believe that we are at 8 o'clock. Well, near 2 minutes to 8 o'clock. And so I'm going to have to cut it short now. But please, I hope you stick around and can ask your questions afterwards over the lovely food that we have outside, which is a great segue. I would love to invite Courtney Sproul to come up and talk about the catering that we have with Eat Off Beat.
She's outside.
She's outside.
Well, she's getting her. Danielle, it'd be great for you to just give us what do you want us to do? What can we do to help support you?
Oh man.
Yeah.
Honestly, right now we're always looking for new relationships and new partners. So anyone that comes to mind, let us know. We really love seeing partners take our program and running with it. beyond that, if you have kids or you have friends at schools or anything like that, let the students know. We usually have these days we have like 150 students signing up a month. So it's been a lot, but we're built to take on as many as possible. So yeah. And then if you know any small business owners, let them know too. This is out there.
Thank you. That was a really nice note to end on, and thank you to both of you. And now, just to turn it over to Courtney for a moment to talk about your wonderful food that's outside.
Yeah, thank you. I'll be super quick, and thanks so much to Kara and everybody at Echoing Green for having us cook for this event. We love, it's our favorite to cook for guests and events that have kind of an overlapping mission. We are Eat Off Beat. We're a company that serves meals that are conceived and prepared by refugees who now live in New York City. So our chefs marry centuries-old culinary traditions with their own, personal creative touch as newly trained food professionals, and as well as just like their favorite, family and friends' preferences of their favorite recipes and dishes from home. So it's fun, and in any single meal, just like today, you can try cuisines from like 3 to 5 different countries, regions that are super regionally specific to where each of our chefs is from. And so even in New York City, where we have access to like so many different kinds of cuisines, it's stuff that's off the beaten path and new to most New Yorkers. So that's our deal. We're actually about to enter right now the last week of a crowdfunding campaign to write the first cookbook ever by refugees who now work as professional chefs, which will be super fun. It's a narrative cookbook, so recipes and stories, and we're super excited. What drew me to Eat Off Beat originally was like, it's a business that's driven by the value that refugees are bringing our communities. Like, our product is theirs. They create it. It's their recipes. It's their own creative and professional efforts. And so to be able to write for them to be able to basically write their own narrative is really exciting. So we're super happy to have that be what's happening for us right now. But thank you so much.
How do we find your crowdfunding campaign?
Yeah, so it's just on our website. Just eatoffbeat.com. It'll direct you right there. It goes through April 8th. So not this Saturday, but next Saturday. And if you sign up, you can of course get the cookbook, but there's all kinds of fun little Kickstarter perks in there. And we have if you're local, we have a spice tour with our chefs where they'll take you to all their favorite secret spots for cool pantry items and stuff, and special dinners cooked by them, all that kind of stuff, cooking classes.
That's awesome.
Well, great. Thank you.
Thank you.